So this video is going to talk about bone fractures. Bones are usually healthy and strong, and they sustain us with movement and so much more. However, due to some trauma, vitamin A deficiency, low bone density, or being old, bone fractures can occur. Bone fractures can lead to tears in blood vessels, which carry nutrients to the bone. But our body has some mechanisms to repair bone fractures. Bone fractures itself can be categorized into 4 parts. It can be classified by the position of the bone ends after a fracture, classified from the completeness of the break, the orientation of the break, or whether the bone has penetrated the skin. So, position of the bone ends can be classified into 2 types. In non-displaced, the bone's position does not move. However, in displaced, you can see that the bone moves. The completeness of the break essentially means whether the bone completely fractured or incompletely fractured. So where it incompletely doesn't break off or it completely breaks off. Moving on to orientation of the break, it means whether the fracture is on a vertical axis or on a horizontal axis, also known as linear or transverse. Obviously, penetration of the skin is a fracture that penetrates the skin, which will cause a compound fracture. One that doesn't penetrate the skin will cause a simple fracture. Moving on to bone fractures, let's say a boy fell down and broke his fibula. So now, let's take a closer look into the bone and see what happens and learn how the fracture repairs itself. So here is a bone, a typical long bone, which contains the periosteum, which wraps around the bone. In this fracture, we have the compact bone and the hollow tube, which is formed by the compact bone, and we also have the spongy bone. Just a few seconds after the fracture, we have major swelling. This stage is known as the hematoma stage, or the hematoma formation begins. Essentially, the hematoma formation is when blood accumulates, forming the hematoma. This causes the death of some cells and swelling and pain associated with the area. As you can see, the blood vessels are damaged here. After a few days, the bone will go into the second stage, known as the fibrocartilaginous callus stage, or the fibrocalvinous callus formation, also known as the soft callus formation. The blood vessels here are regrowing, and we have new blood vessels forming. This is a type of meshwork from granulated tissue that forms the callus, and outside the fracture where the porosity is, we have the external callus being formed. The granulated tissue fills in the gap where the fracture is and rejoins the fractured bones together. After a few weeks, the bone will enter the third stage, which is the bony callus formation stage. Now, this stage, the bony callus formation stage, is when the soft callus previously formed will then become bony callus, and we also have new blood vessels here. The bony callus is formed with the help of other tissues in the area. Then, after several months, the bony callus will remodel to become fine bone. So, this is the bone remodeling stage, where the bony callus is remodeled to become a strong, new, healthy bone. And finally, healing occurs.